Now, if you've seen the Bellagio, and even if you've seen Dubai Mall, you've seen the dancing fountains, this is going to be even more spectacular, even taller, with even more people. 5,000 people, socially distanced, are going to see what I see, and I get the chance to bring on the Disney songs, and I get the chance to bring on the Game of Thrones songs, and you get to see what I see. Have a look at this view. And this is Danny from the Guinness World Records. Exciting day today, Danny, don't you think?
Dave, it's a fantastic day. I mean, will they break the record? Who knows? Oh, I do. But we will find out very, very soon. In approximately 45 minutes, the record holder currently has had the record for 11 years, though. So
where was that?
It's actually in South Korea.
Ah.
So it's a musical fountain in Busan, yeah, in South Korea. And they've held it since the 30th of May, 2009.
Well, the nature of Dubai is they change and they win records all the time. So it wouldn't surprise me too much if tonight we see something rather special happening.
Absolutely. Dubai, so in the UAE in general, we have 423 records, and 60% of that is here in Dubai.
No.
Absolutely. 60% of that is in Dubai, followed by Saudi Arabia, followed by Egypt. But 60% of the records held in the UAE are, yeah, right here.
It doesn't surprise me. I've probably watched most of them actually taking place and happening here. So I'm looking forward to see the fountain. Have you seen the fountain in action? Do you know what to expect?
You know what? I've looked at the diagrams, but I've not seen it in real life. So I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like when it comes alive.
Absolutely. But we know that when it happens, it's going to be spectacular.
Oh, you know it's going to be. It's going to be out of this world. I'm looking forward to it.
Amazing. Thank you. Catch you later on.
Thanks very much.
There you go. There's the man himself. He's responsible for telling everybody whether they managed to do it or not. I've got to say, the atmosphere is starting to build up. Take a look at what I see. It's getting a little bit loud. You might not be able to hear me properly, but you can see. There's the Atlantis. Over on this side, you'll see people starting to gather. So exciting. I've been given the job of bringing on OSN Disney and introducing their songs, especially choreographed for this event. And we've got Game of Thrones as well. So on this side you can see as well. I'm so excited. This is going to change the face of Dubai yet again. Over coronavirus into a brand new world. So I've got an apology to make, by the way, and you probably guessed it, but my mask keeps falling off. Now, I will say in my defense, there was a challenge in the fact that I only have 2 arms. Let me explain. First of all, I have the camera phone, right? The phone is in one hand, which you can see there. In the other hand, I've got the actual microphone. I've got a clipboard, which has got all my notes on. And I've got a big bottle of water stuck just on the bottom of my hand there. Okay, the bottle of water there, microphone, clipboard, and so every time that I try and move my mask up again, I run the risk of everything falling on the floor. So it was difficult because I wasn't expecting to speak at that point. Now, I'll tell you as well, from a social distance point of view, there were clear marks on the floor where people had to stand up, put them about 2 meters apart from each other, and everybody adhered to that, which I'm glad to say was fantastic. Anybody who wasn't wearing a mask was asked to leave by security or go and get themselves a mask, and people were walking around handing out masks to people as well. So it was very well looked after, and I didn't feel unsafe, and I felt that we'd done a really good job of making sure that everybody knew exactly what they were meant to do and where to be. Okay? So now you're thinking, Dave, well, what happened? Did it get the record? Well, I've already told you it did, but what did it look like from that point on? Well, my job is to introduce the big songs by Disney, and to welcome the audience and to say that we've got the record, and you'll get to see exactly how I did that from the point of view of hosting a really world-class event, which is what today's event really is all about. That's me at the World CIO Summit. That was last November, I think it was. And you've got dignitaries from all around the world. So you've got to do a couple of different things when you're doing an event like this. You've got to make sure, first of all, that you are ultra professional. You've got to make sure that you slow things down because not everybody speaks English as a first language. You've got to make sure that the audience enjoys themselves, and priority has to go to making sure the event wins. The event has to be, even if it's a one-off world record, you need to make sure that everybody goes along, says that was amazing, I can't wait for the next world record to come along. So you got your sponsors, you got your venue, you got your audience, you've got the Guinness guys who want to make sure that it's up to the standard of what they will recommend people work with in the future. And you've got all the TV cameras and social media that are also taking care of everything. Now, there's also a challenge that goes into doing anything like that, which is the fact that Facebook, Instagram, YouTube are super hot on playing music. If you've got pop music going on and you're filming something like fountains, there's a very good chance that they'll actually block the footage because of the fact that you haven't got the copyright use. So when you do it, you either have to talk over it so it sort of breaks it up so it can't really tell that you're breaking copyright. I think you're allowed 30 seconds normally, certainly in a broadcasting point of view, but in terms of YouTube, the algorithms are so hot, same as Facebook and Instagram, that they can catch you up in it. So you have to talk over it, or later on in post-production, add some new music instead. I kind of got away with it, and I'm going to share that with you as we go into part 2. So I hope you're enjoying it. Are you enjoying it?
Right away.
Yeah, really?
Sure thing.
Are you sure you're just saying that?
Certainly.
Good. In that case, here's part 2. Now you can see the fountain. It's Speak on Stage. Now, if you can't see the view that I've got, just take a look. These are all restaurants, up and down. Got camera crews on the other side. Let's have a quick look down here. I'll go towards the stage so you can see what we're going to do. Now, I'm on in about 15-20 minutes. And when that's on, we're going live across the world to be able to see it as well. So the very first song we're going to share with you, I'll give you a clue. It features Elsa, it features Anna, and it features a little snowball who's all grown up called Olaf. Can you guess which song it is? We will share with you on social media. We're looking for the hashtags OSN Disney Magic, OSN should be tagged, Disney Arabia should be tagged, and the Point Palm should be tagged. So you'll see that in all its glory here tomorrow night. The thing about doing gigs like this is you've got to be ready all the time. You never know what's going to happen, you never know whether the music's going to go the right way, they're going to change the order, the audience is going to be into it, the audience is going to freeze, or you're just going to make a lot of noise and nothing's going to happen. That's showbiz, that's live entertainment. Luckily, when you're doing a gig in a place like this, and you see the Atlantis behind me, it's not difficult. This looks amazing. That makes my job very easy. Right then, so my chance to share with you from the hosting point of view, if you're an MC or a speaker, these are very useful tips for you. And there's a lot of arguments for why you should be an MC and a speaker, and lots of arguments why you shouldn't be an MC and a speaker at the same event. Here's me at my rugby sevens with the cheerleaders. As you can see, I wasn't old enough to grow a beard, and I had naturally blonde hair, but let's not talk about that. That's in front of, what, about 50,000 people? And about 1 billion watching at home on TV as it goes across all the satellites, fed over 3 days. And you think I'm joking? I'm not joking. I'm seriously not joking.
Certainly.
See? It's true. Okay, so here's a couple of things I'll share with you, about 15 points. When you're going to host an event, make sure you talk to the organizers and find out what their vision is for what your event should be. It doesn't matter what your vision is. It only matters about the people that are paying for it. Your job is to make sure that their vision actually comes true. All the things that they want to put into it is something that you need to be able to achieve on their behalf. If you haven't done that, then you can have an event in your eyes which is fantastic because everyone cheered, and they can turn around and say, yeah, but the sponsors weren't happy. You never once brought over the act. The act is like the entertainer, to sing in front of the sponsors. And that could be a real problem. And sometimes the sponsors are miles away. Sometimes the sponsors have gone to the bathroom. Sometimes the sponsors are in their own little room and you've got to keep an eye out for them to come out. But these are guys who are paying, guys and girls who are paying for your event. So you need to know all the different things that are important to get your head round, otherwise it won't work. Okay, so establish a final decision maker. So you might have a lot of different people in charge. Don't be scared to turn around and say, right, who do I answer to on the day? People might say that person, yeah, but who's the final person? It's normally a money person, but most of the time it's an operations person. The money person tends to be doing some money business, but the operations person is in charge of making sure it all comes together. And sometimes that person works for the sponsor. This is especially in a corporate event. And sometimes that person is a show caller who's been brought in from outside or from an events team to run the event and make it all come together. You need to make sure, and sometimes you do have various people that you got to talk to and you got to look out for. You need to be able to turn around for accountability's sake and turn around and ask difficult questions. What should I do now? And they can turn around and say, I would do it this way, and you work on that. You can argue, but you shouldn't ever turn around and not do what those people say. Otherwise, it won't bring it back again. And I've had this many occasions. I've turned around, I've said, what do you think we should do now? I think we should do this. They say no. And you argue it through with them. And then you say, okay, I disagree, but I'll go with whatever you want it to be. And I make a point of saying that. Sometimes I've had situations where they've brought me off early. I've disagreed, but I've done it. And then they apologize later, and they've ruined my chance to do exactly what I wanted to do on stage, but it's their call. It's their event. If a host is there, an MC, and he tells me to get off stage, I've got plenty of time left. As far as my calculations go, I will still leave because they know something that I don't know. And if I overstay my welcome, they'll never bring me back again. And this is a bottom line rule. I know lots of people who've never been invited back on stage again because they overstayed their welcome and they use the excuse, but it's going so well, the crowd love me. Who cares? Who cares if the crowd love you? Your job is to fit in. You're being hired to do a job within a certain amount of time, and you have not got the full scale of everything if you're a speaker. The host has, and the organizers have, and there might be a bigger picture. You might be overstaying the welcome when they have 5 minutes, like in Dubai. You may have a sheikh or a member of a royal family or a visiting dignitary who's going to pop in for 5 minutes. For that 5 minutes, you want to say thank you for coming, and you want to make sure that they have the round of applause that they deserve for arriving at your event. If the artist won't get off the stage and they walk in and walk out again, you've blown your opportunity, that photo opportunity, that chance to tell everybody that they were there, and that chance to get that reward of knowing that people recognized and they recognize it's worth going to your events because people make a special effort to look after them. These are all money in the bank. You've got to work it out. So now you've got those in play, think like a fan. What do they want to see? Now, this is difficult for a host sometimes because you've already got the organizers telling you what you got to do, but you also have to think from a fan's point of view. What will they see when they arrive, and what can you spin once you go live? So when I mean what can you spin when you go live, what I'm talking about is the fact that you have a certain venue, you have a certain plan, you have a certain thing. But for instance, as I mentioned earlier, in rugby sevens, if England get knocked out and people don't want to watch anymore because they don't care that much, you've got to build them up about the excitement of the rest of the teams. You've got to play great music, some great games. You've got to make sure that everyone knows what a great event. And isn't it amazing you saw that team get knocked out? Doesn't matter, we've got more coming up. Excuse me. I know I'm talking a lot about England at the rugby sevens, but it was a thing. It was a thing, I promise you. So with that in mind, you always have to be able to spin the plates to make sure that people really enjoy what's going on. Number 4, establish objectives. Is this a one-off event? Do you look for the next event to make sure that you drive everything? So social media, footage, crowd engagement, all these things. You should always treat it like it's a one-off. always, but always treat it like it's a one-off until it comes back again. Are people going for the spectacle of it? Are they going along because they love it? Are the sponsors driving everything? Should they be looked after more than the actual gig? In many cases, the answer is yes, because without the sponsors, there's nothing. Are you looking after the audience? In most cases, the audience is an afterthought because there's so many other moving pieces. And you're saying, yeah, but what about the audience? That's your job. Your job is to make sure the audience comes out of it loving it. And if you don't do it, then they're going to blame you squarely and say, well, you didn't entertain or engage with people enough. So sometimes you end up having to do a serious, super serious event, but you do it with a tongue-in-cheek attitude. Let me show you, for example, what I'm talking about. So if I share with you this particular event on the front of it, this is the World CIO Summit. So this has about 200-300 of the world's biggest decision makers from every company you can think of, the chief information officer, the guy in charge of all the digital, of all the tech, all of them in a room. I say guy, there were a handful of females, but not enough of them in that particular industry. Incredible event. My job was to be formal and to hold it all together, but you've also got to look at your audience. These guys are fantastic, but they are generally shy. Why? Because they're techies, like engineers or programmers. So your job is to overcompensate and make sure it's a lot of fun. If you don't do that, the event will feel dry. And if you've got speakers that are relatively dry, because it's a very techy event, you've got to make sure that sometimes you camp it up. You've got to get a yin and yang balance to get the whole event across the finishing line. That's your job. Okay, so with our sponsors, it could be all of those and the above. It could be anything you've got to make sure you look after in any particular order. Number 5, talk to all the key element decision makers. Key element decision makers. I've already mentioned some of them. I've talked about sponsors, talk about somebody who's bringing crowds in, got to talk about the security, got to talk about the catering, got to talk about the buses leaving. You even might have to talk to the not armed forces, to the police and ambulance people. Just in case something happens, what is the protocol? Who will tell me that you've got to evacuate if there's a fire alarm that goes off? Because it might go off by accident. You turn around and say there's a fire alarm, ladies and gents, you've got to leave a building, people get in their cars and go, you'll kill the event. So the fire alarm should be followed by somebody who's a designated person who tells you exactly what you need to do. And if you're smart and you do it properly, what should happen is long before it gets to that, you should turn around and know what's going to happen. Shouldn't be a fire alarm that goes off. It should only go off when somebody's whispered to you there's a problem. Could you suggest to people A, B, C, and D? And if you do go down that route, if you are going to send them outside, then you need to be prepared to catch them outside, maybe even with a loud hailer, or maybe in shouting, or telling waiters and waitresses to go around, or stewards to tell people it's safe, can you come back into the venue, please? If you don't do that, people act on their own, and it's like herding cats. It can be a nightmare, because somebody starts a rumor about what it was, and suddenly before you know it, it gets out of control. I do remember one situation, I probably shouldn't talk about it, so I'm not going to talk about it.
For the last time, no.
See, I just can't.
No.
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 But I want to.
I said no.
Just one little bit.
And oh.
Okay, keep it to yourself then. Number 6, speak to technical showrunners and agencies for their requirements and objectives. There's so many moving parts involved in putting an event together. The show caller could be you as a host. The show caller could be somebody who's in charge of everything with a clipboard. The show caller could be the organizer who put it all together, but on the day doesn't know how to do anything because they just got all the moving pieces and hoped it would all work. You need to have somebody to report to. Sometimes that report is you, but you need to make sure that you get that call from somebody to say that you're in charge. Generally, a host is in charge, but they're in charge of making sure that the communication goes out, if not the actual timing of the acts going on or everything else that goes as well. Number 7, learn the event background if possible, and if not, establish a new brief for 3 lines to share with new arrivals. Now that sounds like a lot of things to talk about. Let me explain exactly what it is. So you need to be able to talk about previous events. Welcome back to this event. Last year, as you remember, we had England winning something, probably not, but that's what you're going to be able to say. But you also have to, if it's a new one, turn around and summarize it in 3 lines or less what people are doing. Welcome to the event. It's the very first of its kind, and we'd like to thank the sponsors for being here. And today you're going to see this guy winning the world championship for putting putting cups on his head. It's a World Cup heading competition, and welcome to it. And if you want to practice, and see what happens, just 3 things there that you have to have lined up. If you make it up as you go along and you haven't worked out what you're going to have as your strap lines, people will ignore it because it sounds made up. It's going to sound like you've actually done your studying and know what you're talking about. Okay, so event background, make sure it's a brief, and agree that brief, because that's going to go out public. So people have to agree that's the right thing to say. All right, number 8, make sure that music and activations are in place. Now, this is really, really important when it comes to music and activations. Let me share with you exactly why. So, when you are doing an event, the old days, you could have a DJ there if you weren't already DJing yourself, or sometimes you've got sound and light guys playing music out for you. Now that's great because it's songs that people will like and will sing along to, and I remember that, and maybe it builds up the atmosphere. But when you're actually doing your thing live, if you're going live and streaming, which is more and more the case nowadays, if you're using an established song, like Simply the Best by Tina Turner when somebody wins, or We Are the Champions by Queen, or Let It Go from Elsa from Frozen, there's a very good chance that your social media will stop because you've got no copyright to be able to play it. And suddenly you'll be taken off the air. And you've got no clue why it's all gone bad. And it breaks the stream, breaks communication and the link to everybody watching. It's really hard to get them back again. And it means that that crucial element that you want to have in that wonderful video of the whole event, so you can use it to cut it down to social media and use it to sell for your next event, doesn't exist. So what I always do is I make sure I've got copyright-free music. I go onto various websites, I buy music that sounds like the songs I'm looking for, usually instrumental stuff, and I can play that at those strategic times. If you don't do that, you can end up with having very little footage apart from people's cameras, and you have to go back and put new music on it, which means it hijacks the ability to have the commentators talking in the first place. Get some copyright music, copyright-free music, agree it with the organizers, and then that's what you use. And it can be used all the time, and because it's unusual music, it can be a signature theme for the actual event at the same time. Okay, make sure... Okay, so copyright music, we got that, and make sure music and activations are in line with the event. Okay, so that was number 8. I sort of jumped past that. So whenever you've got an audience, there will be lulls. Make sure you schedule it in, but sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes a generator needs fixing. Sometimes somebody's got an injury, so you've got to wait while things are going on. If you can, play music. If you can't play music and there needs to be something more, have something you can play with the audience. But always talk to the audience. Always let them know what's going on. As much as you possibly can. Don't keep them in the dark. Doesn't mean you have to reveal everything, but then just talk up what else is coming through. So having a load of bullet points about the whole event is always useful for padding and filling that time. Number 10, have a number of standby audience partition elements that I mentioned there, just in case things go wrong. There could be games, there could be competitions. You might end up with a lot of prizes to give out that you never actually gave out because you didn't actually need that time. That's a nice problem to have. You can hand them out to kids later on, or you can put them into raffles, or you can have them as an online competition post-event. You don't have to give everything out at that time, but you must be transparent as you do it, otherwise people will call it a fix, and if that word gets out, then you get up with lots of little trouble as well. Okay, number 11 is this one. Script everything as bullet points with the correct names, and check the names and check the protocols. If you say somebody's name wrong, because it kind of sounds a bit like that, they will be incredibly offended. 99% of the time, because that's their chance to shine. And we had a rehearsal at the Fountain event, and at the time, one of the MCs introduced me, I won't say who it was, as Dave Crave. Somebody's written Dave Crave. He knew it was Dave Crane, but he read it out. It's the first time he actually connected with it. He changed it immediately as he said it, but can you imagine that for your branding? So he calls you Dave Crave. Well, it won't bother you, it's not your name. But for me, it's got to be right. So you got to make sure, especially when people, your name is your brand, that you got everything right and everything correct. And if you're not sure about somebody's name, get somebody with authority to run the name by you and how you're meant to pronounce it. Write it down phonetically so you got exactly what it should be. If you just joined us, by the way, welcome to Speak on Stage. I hope this is useful for you. It's about how to host a world-class event. So this should be a checklist for anybody who's hosting events when we come back to having events. All right, number 12, brief your team and team leaders so everyone has a contact list. Everyone should have a contact list. Everyone should have a copy of the program. Everybody should be a one-stop shop for being able to find out what goes on and where. If you haven't got that, then they have a really weak link in the team, and ultimately people will blame you if people go, I don't know. I asked everybody and nobody knew what was going on. Even if they do know what's going on, but they don't have it written in front of them, then you'll still get the blame for that. And people will just look at it and have a post-mortem and say you didn't deliver, even if you did. Number 13, always look like things are intentional and manage all expectations. So if things are going wrong, make sure you got plans for them. Don't make any big decisions unless you have no choice without running it by a decision maker. Like I mentioned, if there's a fire alarm that goes off, you don't mention anything. You just make a beeline for the organizers to find out whether it's true and whether you've got to deal with it. If you say it on the microphone, then you alert people to it. Be very careful what you say on the microphone, but also be very careful when you do discuss these things, you haven't got people from the public listening to you in the background, because that will spread as well. People will also say, I've just heard people talk about this, we should go. From experience, it's very, very rare about being at an event where it just got cancelled in the middle of it. I remember one time we did this event, going back about 25 years, where the venue caught fire and was in flames. So I was working for a radio station. So what did I do? I did a live radio report on how the event has caught flames. Yes, I did, but there you go. So things do happen, and it was not funny, but it was interesting to do the radio report. All right, number 14, almost finished now, is this. Always know how to start and end and have a second in command just in case. Let me explain. When you start the event, it's going to be done the right way. First impressions count. When you end, you need to know exactly how to do it. So it could be a thank you very much, good night. But before that might be an awards ceremony. And that needs to be calculated and written down. Who's doing what? Who's handing it out? Where are they going to stand? Are you going to bring them? How long do they get on? Are you getting photos of everybody as they all win? And that's it? Or do you want them to come back at the very end? In which case you just stand at the side. Are you going to have somebody handing out the trophies? All these things need to be choreographed in advance. If you make it up as you go along, I promise you it will go wrong and it will look cheap and nasty and you'll be dead embarrassed. You need to make sure you got all these different things covered when you do this live event, otherwise it will come back and bite you. And as second in command, certainly for the emceeing, have somebody just in case your throat goes bad or you get taken away or something goes wrong. Maybe the DJ can cover for you, or maybe you know somebody who's very, very good who comes along to shadow you. Always make sure there's somebody who can do it for you, because the audience won't know and won't care if it looks like it's taken charge of. If it goes quiet and there's a real problem and you're off dealing with it and nobody can step in and say, right, ladies and gents, just carry on, I'm just taking over the day for a little while, or whoever you are, then people will notice there's something, because there'll be silence, and then they start to panic, and they do. They always start to panic. All right, so then last but not least is this, number 15. Get plenty of footage to drive the event long after the doors have closed. Remember, your next event is only as good as the event that you're doing right now. Nobody cares about the event once it's finished, but they need to see evidence of how great it was. And people who hire speakers, people who hire hosts, people who hire any kind of entertainment, hire them from certainty. They want to know that you can deliver and you've got a past track record of delivering. That's what they look at. And that's what's going to shape it, because they need to go to sponsors and potential events, the decision makers, and say, this is who we're going to recommend. Have a look at this video. If you haven't got footage, but all you've got is a good reputation, it's not enough. Not nowadays. They can fly in anybody from anywhere who has got footage. So all the time, think about that. Sometimes give your phone to somebody. Sometimes make sure that you get access to the footage of the actual event. From experience, do both. Because by the time you get the footage of the event, you might find that you're not on it, or the bit you're looking for wasn't there. So if you can, take along somebody, hire them, pay them, whatever it takes to get some footage of you in action, because that's a game changer. And once you've got that, people know you're there, and they really enjoy the experience. So with that, that's the entire list. Wow, that was a bit of a mouthful. I can't believe I went on for such a long time. It's quite a long show with this, but it is quite important, especially if you're hosting events. So I'll move my head slightly to one from the other side, like that, which gives you enough time to be able to take a snapshot. There we go. Was that useful for you? Yes?
Of course.
Thank you so much.